a better place.
You're listening to Chicago Stories, a new podcast from City Hall featuring the stories of everyday Chicagoans as told to Mayor Rahm Emanuel.
This is Mayor Rahm Emanuel from Chicago Stories. We're with Michael Patrick Thornton, who runs the Gift Theater at 4802 North Milwaukee, and it's in my view, one of the great classic Chicago not only success stories, but storefront theaters. And my wife and I have seen a number of plays there. How you doing?
Good. Thanks so much for having me in to talk.
No, thank you. What do you guys have showing now at the Gift?
Right now it's super busy at the Gift. So we just launched a new play program called 4802, inspired by our address. We thought
that was a dead giveaway, wasn't it?
It was. We like to keep it real simple in Jefferson Park.
Well, sometimes I say around here, don't think too hard, you're going to screw it up.
Exactly, yeah. Or when my best friend's brother got divorced, we said, what happened? He goes, you know, she was just too much college, not enough high school. So anyway, we have a new...
I got to use that.
A new play program called 4802, and you know, we thought we're getting such a great reputation for producing new plays. Why not take it a step further and be like the theaters that I fell in love with, like the Royal Court or the Abbey, and actually nurture and support them. So we funded this for a company our size, pretty major new play program. So
that's fabulous.
That's going up, and then we have our third show, A Swell on the Ground, which is a brand new play by Janine Neighbors, and then that's the end of our 16th anniversary. So it's just been
16. When you get to 18 in the great Jewish faith for the Irishmen, I'll give you the chai, okay?
Okay,
to life.
Great, yeah.
Tell me, or tell everybody, how did the concept of the Gift Theater, and how did you get to that concept? Where were you before, and how did you decide, here in Jeff Park, we're putting down our roots, man?
Yeah, well, it's interesting you structured the question in 3 parts, because that's kind of how it went, actually. The idea for the Gift started at the University of Iowa with my buddy Will Nedved and I. And Will's from what I thought was what I would call a small town in Iowa called Garner. But, you know, Jefferson Park can often feel like a small town in Chicago, you know, and even though I was from the big city and he was from the small town, getting to know each other, we realized that our experiences growing up were pretty similar, because we both were people whose proclivities didn't have access in their local neighborhoods. There wasn't a theater, there wasn't a dance troupe, there wasn't an improv group. So we thought, well, why don't we start a theater and change that? And of course we didn't. Our first show was at the University of Chicago, right? In 2001 is when the Gift first became legal, non-for-profit, which means you can donate online.
In case everybody's
right up on your taxes.
Yeah.
But you know, we kind of behaved like every other theater, right? We rented around when space became available. Once the space became available, then we thought, what should we put in it? And it was just a real backwards way of curating. I mean, it wasn't curating. And then Will and I sat at my parents' kitchen table over a bottle or 2 of wine and said, this sucks.
I hope that was a good vintage.
Yeah, I'm sure whatever Walgreens had that night.
The month was unbelievable. It was a great December.
right. Yeah, it was just a couple shades above Boone's Farm, probably. And we said, you know, this sucks. This isn't the
life.
This isn't what we wanted to do, you know? And we said, let's find a neighborhood that's underserved. And in pure irony, we looked from Edgewater to Edison Park, you know, Logan Square, back before it was hip, and we found this space. And we fell in love with it because every storefront has notoriously low ceilings. And the Gift has like 17-foot high ceilings, which means like we could, if we invested in a great lighting system, which we did, we could really make that space feel epic or small. We can zoom in on someone's face, we can isolate people. And we went from a company that had no business having a lease and had no subscribers into this kind of if you build it, they will come thing. And I remember being really nervous and talking to my mom about it. And we found, well, we were still building the theater out, and we found a black and white photo of my grandpa, who was a beat cop. And it was from 1962. And it was him standing in the vestibule of 4802 on a winter night.
Oh, that is so cool.
And so that seemed like...
Grandpa and mom's maternal grandpa.
Dad's dad,
oh, okay.
Yeah, so 2 generations of cops. And then I said, I'll play one on TV, but no. And so, yeah, so we moved in 2005, did our first show there, and we've been there for, you know, what, 11, 12 years now.
Yeah, well, yeah, that is so impressive, man.
Yeah.
What is the history? I got like 6 questions, so if I bounce around, what is the history behind the name, or what's the story behind the story of calling it The Gift?
It was inspired by a paragraph in a book called Towards a Poor Theater by Jerzy Grotowski. And he talks about, it basically drills down to kind of like what survives you as an artist. You know, it's not the reviews, it's not the awards. Like, what is it? And it's
it isn't? No.
Crazily enough, it's not. And yeah, in a subjective field, crazily enough, awards don't tend to heal that space, right? And he drilled down and said it's the connection between the actor and the audience. And if you show up, essentially, if you're showing up for work to that theater for a reason larger than your own personal edification, if it's for a more humanitarian reason, if it's more to maybe save somebody in the audience or show what you've gone through and the interest that connects to someone in pain out there, that essentially what you're doing is you're giving a total gift of yourself. And
a total gift of yourself?
Of yourself.
To the audience, or to that, yeah.
And of course they give a gift of themselves by showing up and, you know, for the most part not opening candy and being quiet. And so I think it just points to a bigger reason of showing up as an artist to that space. And it's kind of been our North Star ever since.
Oh, that's a very cool concept. What do you think has been your, or you're not going to tell anybody the secret behind your success, because you've out-survived the history of storefront theaters, and then in the arc of your journey, what do you think is going on in Chicago theater today, and what's the strengths of it, what's its vulnerability, so to say? What have you seen change? What do you want to hold on to as part of the community?
Yeah. Great, I mean, those are 2 great questions. I think we have a saying at The Gift inspired by this movie, The Contender, which is a principle only means something if you stick to it when it's not convenient.
You know what I used to say in Washington? You're firm in your opinions, it's your principles you're flexible on.
I like that.
You like that? You ever want to stick it to somebody? Say, you sound like you're firm in your opinions, it's your principles you're flexible on.
And I think like what really, if I had to point to one thing, it was that at a time when it was not convenient at all for us to say, yeah, let's get our own building in a neighborhood where it's never been tested. We took it a step further and we joined the union. And
oh wow! So you really kind of like wanted to get some headwinds behind you, in front of you rather.
So we went from a company that, I mean, we just found our first budget, which was scratched out on a bar napkin. It was like $450 for the whole show. Going from that to now you have weekly payroll, now you're paying health and pension, and I think the fact that the first mature business decision we made as a bunch of kids was to literally invest in our own people, forced us to grow up at a rate that our own kind of natures wouldn't have set that rhythm. And we never went back on that. And the number of equity storefronts in Chicago is like 3. You know?
Oh, I don't think I knew that. Really?
Yeah. I mean, most of the storefront theater is non-equity. You know, they're not paying health and pension. And that's why Chicago's such a great, robust city, is that there's 300 theaters at any given time, right? But if you're bouncing around and you're nomadic and you can't get any kind of groove going with followers because now you're here, now you're there, it's tough. And then you have your own space, and then you add to that the contracts. It was, I mean, looking back, I can't believe we actually did it and survived. How Chicago theater's changed.
The scene.
Yeah, well, we've been rocked lately, as you know. I mean, we had Martha Levy pass.
Right.
Steppenwolf was a good friend of mine. Sheldon Patinkin, who was an ensemble member at The Gift and helped start Second City in Steppenwolf in many ways. From my seat, I think what we're seeing is a little bit of a war between the aesthetics of prominence and the aesthetics of significance.
Prominence versus significance?
Significance, yeah.
Do you think you see them in conflict?
I see them in conflict in the sense that organizations think that actually their aesthetic is significance, but what it really is prominence. And what often breaks my heart as a Chicagoan is that if we're going to be a world-class theater city, and what we run on is ensemble, then that word actually needs to mean something. And that word doesn't mean something if you have ensemble where people don't talk to each other, or get on stage with each other, or work with each other. That word doesn't mean as much if people think that they've gotten to a place in their career where they can't get back in a room and train with each other. And
do you think that division is, there's a class system in Chicago between the Steppenwolfs, the Goodmans, the Northlight, Looking Glass, and the Storefront? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm not saying that there's a class system.
Not class may not be, but there's if you're saying prominence versus aesthetic of kind of originality, I'm not saying you took a shot at any one of the big shoulders,
right?
Since I'm a fan of those, but that's okay. I mean, I'm asking you, is that what it's about?
No, I mean, and I owe a lot of my career to Steppenwolf, and
I was going to get into that.
I'm appearing there next month, so you know.
At the end of this podcast, and maybe in a witness protection plan. No, and you're great, look, and I want to get to your Shakespeare performance on King Richard.
Thank you. Well, no, I mean, I met my wife at Steppenwolf. I met so many people from the Gift at Steppenwolf. I'm not talking about them in particular. I'm talking of a larger, much more systemic kind of cold that happens throughout Chicago with that we overuse this word ensemble. And
you don't think it's authentic anymore?
I don't think it's authentic anymore in certain cases. And I think that's a word that if we're Chicagoans and we make art in this city and we make theater in this city, we better damn well earn that word to always retain that place at the top. And that applies to a company whose annual budget is $500 and to the largest companies in the city. You know, it's not taking a shot at anybody in particular.
Okay. There's three things I've talked about this before, which I think is going on, which I find interesting, more in theater than I would say as somebody who spends a lot of time at dance as well, is, you know, we're opening the new Shakespeare Theater. We did Steppenwolf. In fact, here at this table, the Looking Glass team was in here. We're going to help them out on stuff. Is the spaces, and I want to say one shout out, and I want to talk to you about this, which is, you know, we're about to, beginning of September, open up the theater on the lake. It's year round. I really lent the gift to look at doing something there. Yeah,
I used to be a co-curator there.
I know, but it's specifically built so when you find something, your run ends, but you really want to keep doing it. How can that space be a venue? But theaters, what's interesting is are now also creating spaces for conversation pre and post production.
Yeah.
And I don't know of another art form that's kind of taken that on that way, so that people don't just go to a theater and then forget what the gift they were supposed to discuss, and capturing people there to be part of that conversation, so the play, when it ends, doesn't end its purpose.
Yeah, unless you're David Mamet and want in your contract that you can't talk about anymore. But what I would offer to Mr. Mamet is the right place people would like to talk about afterwards. You're drilling down to a really interesting question that I'm super passionate about these days, which is this kind of, in the interest of time, this existential question of what is a theater? What ought a theater be, right? And so the gift right now, it's 16, 17 years, this storefront, what drives me crazy about it is there is no space, literally, in that building for us to have that kind of...
You should build a loft. I hear it's got 17-foot ceilings. So you should think about it.
A little hay loft up there, yeah. I mean, so we're looking at a space on the street, right, for an additional space, because what if a theater could be a place that had an old-fashioned pub with board games and books and encouraged conversation that my Northwest Side neighbors can go in and feel welcome and safe at, that just so happen to have a world-class theater in the back of it. If you do that, you've fundamentally changed the perception of what art is, and you've taken it from an indulgence to a necessity, right? And if it can be a community anchor, if it can be a place where people feel that they can go and meet their neighbors and talk before and after and meet the actors, it drags everything down to a level that's approachable and accessible.
So I would say pull everything up so everybody's on the same plane. But I got it. No, I think, and also I think people are yearning for this space to share because of their own sense of isolation.
Yeah.
I know you have a time and I do, but so talk about your performance of Shakespeare, King Richard, what it was like for you.
Yeah, I found
I mean, it's so special. It's been written about, and I've read about, you know, Amy loved it.
Yeah.
I'm guilty. It's one time I haven't seen it, so I feel bad. So talk about, for you, what it meant.
Well, you know, I tried to make a point in my career as an actor who is a incomplete quadriplegic to that the best way I can possibly leave the world a better place for the next generation and for the young actors starting out who might have a disability is for me to do roles that don't talk about disability. Is for me to actively refuse those. Is for me to play the lawyer or the best friend on TV and film, and is never mentioned because it forces the audience to get rid of having to contextualize it. Richard III, however, is one of those roles where if you're going to talk about it once, there's your place. And
why is that?
Because he's the most infamous disabled character in the Western canon of literature, and it opens up a whole range of considerations, you know, of the person who's so angry that they're compromised physically that they're hatching all these schemes, right? That tropism, you know. It offers a great opportunity as a disabled actor, first of all, to play a role that usually is played by an able-bodied actor pretending to be disabled, and sort of even the playing field that way.
Did Barbara approach you? Did you guys hear? Did you hear that they're going to do King Richard, and that you?
No, I mean, she sent me an opening night letter and saying, you know, congratulations, good luck, you know. But we were supposed to do that play at Next Theater, and Next collapsed.
Oh, I don't think I knew.
And then Tracy Letts reached out to myself and Jessica Thebus, who was the director, and then to Martha Levy, and they said, let's make some space for you at the Garage. And so we partnered with what was then called the Rehabilitation Institute of Chicago, and I trained for 3 months on a wearable exoskeleton that would help me walk. The thinking being that
I didn't know. The Rehab Institute was involved?
They were a major production sponsor, and they are still a major sponsor of the Gift Theater.
Cool.
It's the first time in history that an actor has ever acted on stage in a wearable exoskeleton. I'm still waiting for the Guinness Book of World Records to call me on it, but I mean, you always say in marketing, you've never seen a show like this before. Literally no one had ever seen that before. I mean, people like they got hit in the head with a shovel when I came out at the top of Act 2 during the coronation and walked in a walker with this thing. It's a wearable suit that just walks you. But it's like a dance. It's like a wearable scene partner. And if you hit a move wrong, it would stop working. So not only are you communicating with a machine, and I'm talking to you in a scene, it's also Shakespeare. So it was a lot of balls in the air, you know. But we had people see that show who said that they never had to see a Richard again, you know. And I'm immense.
That's fabulous. That's got to be rewarding.
It is, yeah. It's immensely rewarding. And I said everything I wanted to say about my feelings about what happened to me and getting thrown a curveball at age 24 in that role, and it was a great container for it.
So there was a catharsis at one
I
level.
think so, yeah. I think art always provides a little bit of a protective screen behind which we can say some real things.
Do you ever, you get scared before you go on stage?
I get the dry heaves every single night before I go on stage.
Yeah, it's funny. I was telling my son was asking me if before a speech, I said, yeah, Bill Clinton got scared. The only person I know that never got scared. I'll give you a classic. Clinton would rehearse line, literally driving up to walking onto the stage.
And rewriting it at the same time, probably.
I still have edits, man. I have actually a photo one day I'll show you where we were editing a State of the Union 10 minutes out. Paul Begala, the main one, in the heat of the Battle of the Windsor.
Yeah.
And he, Begala, and myself are in the side room preparing. And President Obama, one run through.
That's it.
That's it. Done. Does it one practice. President Clinton, if it was 20, it was 25. If it was 25, it was 30. Just and like re-editing.
Does President Obama get nervous?
If he does, he's not going to show it. Clinton would, take that big suck of air in beforehand, and he's going into a zone of where he wants. He's calculating who is in there, what's he got, But I think it's only normal to be. I always tell my son, if you're not nervous, you're not going to perform.
You don't care as much, you know.
Yeah, you got to get into that space.
Yeah.
Give me some of the people you've met that you've admired in at the, whether it's Gift or other theaters, that you said, I really want to work with them. Where did you work with them? I really want to work with them one more time, and I haven't had that chance.
I think Shonda Rhimes, honestly. I mean, Shonda Rhimes changed my life in terms of.
Say why?
Because she took a little-known Chicago actor who probably was known more for having a spinal stroke than for his achievements on stage, and put a disabled character played by a disabled actor on primetime network television on Private Practice. Paired me up with Audra McDonald.
Oh.
Turned what was supposed to be a 2-episode run into a 2-year, 14-episode run. Taught me everything I know about acting on film and television. And told those stories really respectfully and really well. And I would love to go back and work with her again. To see someone who has that kind of power in the industry still care about taking risks and creating an environment that's fun and not panicked.
One of the things that's interesting is, I have immense respect for you, and I have what you've built at the Gift. Is how do you? I don't mean to do this again about a conversation I had with my kids, but how do you get established and still have the verve of being a risk taker and not kind of shift down a gear and coast on a plane? How do you keep, you know what I mean?
Totally, man. I mean, I think this gets into the things that, like, these are the things that, like, Marcus Aurelius and Seneca and Epictetus. I mean, really, you're talking about what are your principles?
Yeah.
Why are you showing up? Why are you getting out of bed?
How do you get the verve to keep, how do you get the, I have a thing about in politics, which is you got to be idealistic enough to know why you're doing what you're doing, and then ruthless enough to want to get it done.
Right.
It's not one or the other. But how do you, like, achieve a place, but never lose the nerve of the drive to getting to that place?
Right, and how do you have the wherewithal to know when you've arrived at a place that is more than enough? You know what I mean? Like, how do you not keep expanding?
All right, so if you got a free shot at the mayor. Okay. Give me the 2 things takeaway that the mayor has to do to help the cultural/theater community in Chicago, that it can't do it itself, in the sense of what you said, being a true city of an ensemble type theater culture. What should I do? What would be your advice? I mean, because I think the truth is probably the best thing is don't get involved.
Right.
This is the true laissez-faire. Let us figure it out and thrash at each other.
Right.
But I mean, what's your, because I think we have as long as kids coming from University of Iowa, DePaul, Northwestern, all these universities keep coming, we're going to keep an energy level that, is still young and energetic and boundless. But is there something I should be doing, or leading the city in an effort?
I think one thing that the city could do is to steer that energy into underserved communities. Not every new theater has to happen in the neighborhoods that are saturated. Not every new company needs to rent out from the same places. Why don't we pioneer a bit more in this city? And why don't we find those communities like Jefferson Park that didn't have a place to call home, and lay roots and invest.
Had they, Jefferson Park has a great park.
Yeah.
Had Jefferson Park or / this park district offered you the park district facility when you were going to Edgewater, going to Jefferson Park, and you were, as we would say, bedouins running around the city?
Yeah, right.
Would you have taken them up? Because I always think our park district, some of these facilities are
They're gorgeous.
Yeah, they're gorgeous, underused sometimes. That's why we did this night out in the park.
Sure. One of my first plays was 12 Angry Men at Jefferson Park Fieldhouse.
Oh, okay.
If they did offer to us, it'd be the height of irony, because I can't get up the stairs. There's no elevator. But we did partner with them to do War of the Worlds 2 years ago.
Okay.
As a Halloween pop-up. But I think the parks is a great way in, you know. But I think young companies think if we're not renting out in a hip neighborhood, no one's going to come and see it, you know. And I think like
that's somewhat true, you know.
Was that?
That's not exactly.
It's not exactly untrue, but it's not exactly 100% true too, you know. And look, if a $600,000 annual non-for-profit tiny gift theater can hold a corner and help revitalize that tiny strip of Chicago, well, what if there are 20 more of them, you know?
Okay. You gave me something to work on, man.
Yeah.
We're with Michael Patrick Thornton, Gift Theater, Chicago Stories. You got to get to 18, man, so I can give you a resolution and a high.
All right, good.
It's the new rules in Chicago. You got to make it to 18.
Then I retire.
Congratulations, man.
Thank you.
So proud
Pleasure.
of you.
Always. Yep. Yeah.
You have been listening to Chicago Stories, a new podcast from City Hall featuring the stories of everyday Chicagoans as told to Mayor Rahm Emanuel.